Well, I'd like to welcome you to the July edition of Wake Up Newport. My name is Rush Hill. I'm been honored with the opportunity of calling this meeting together for a period of time when I'm in town. And as we start, we're going to have another exciting morning. I can guarantee you that. Well, this morning we're pleased to have a speaker that has not been at the dais in this community since last night, and an Orange Countyan for sure that understands our community. Joe, and I'm going to do my best on this, Dacient, it's just like patient, has a very experienced individual in the real estate market. He ran the firm of Theory R Properties as CEO for 10 years. When he took it over, it was $30 million, and when he left it running, it was $150 million during that 10-year period of time. He was the CEO of Southwest Jet Center, and most recently, he is the one that put together the team to create ACI Jet, which is actually, in the history of FBOs, is a relatively new one. And of course, that is the premier one at this point in time at John Wayne Airport. Does everyone know that we live in a community that has the only airport with 3 names? It's the Orange County Airport, it's JWA, and its actual call is SNA. So the confusion started a long time ago. But Joe spends much of his time flying. He's an avid, passionate pilot. He has a high rating with the Citation Mustang and with over 2,000 hours. And I understand there'll be a drawing later today for the group that he'll be taking up and touring Orange County with. Is that right, Joe? Yeah. That's right after you and I go. And so we're real pleased to have Joe with us. He's got a lot of knowledge and very involved in what's going on at Orange County Airport. So Joe, come on up.
Well, good morning. It was a long night last night. Councilman Herdman was kind enough to keep the questions soft during a panel last night. I'm rolling on 5 hours of sleep, so I chugged a lot of coffee. And it was, to say people are passionate about this issue, about John Wayne Airport, would be an understatement. Is that fair? It is a highly emotional item, highly emotional, and I saw that last night. I actually had prepared 2 different presentations, one for this morning and one for last night. And last night got really technical, and we're actually going to brave that a second time. We're going to actually follow that theme again because I think it was really beneficial. As I said at the end of the night to a number of people, questions went for a good hour and a half, 2 hours after the meeting. And someone said to me that at the end of the day, this is your backyard, this is your neighborhood. And so it's not business at all cost. It's about being a responsible neighbor. And so the thing is, we're going to talk about the GAIP a little bit, the General Aviation Improvement Program. But the underlying current, the reason everyone's so attentive to this issue is noise, period. And I don't think it's an issue that's been addressed head on well enough. So I want to go in greater detail today about it than last night. And then I want to end it a little bit early so that we can get to questions because there was a lot last night and I expect the same today. So last night, had the privilege of being on the panel with Sue Dvorak from CAMP, Tom Edwards, the airport's, or the city's airport consultant, and it was a long night but a really good one. So I put a lot of time and energy into yesterday and to today, and I want to stress this. I'm thankful that we're having civil dialogue and that groups of opposing views are coming together to discuss it. And one of the most important parts is that we get on the same defined terms. All too often, a word is spoken and it is interpreted by different people to mean different things, which ensues frustration and emotions, confusion, and it just exasperates a problem bigger than it really is. So I've had the privilege of speaking with every member of the Aviation Subcommittee, Councilman Herdman, Mayor Dixon, Councilman Muldoon. I've had the privilege of sitting and speaking with every board office at the county, And I'll say this, of special note, Vice Chair Steele and Supervisor Doe have taken a great leadership position in coming with a balanced approach and being sensitive to the needs. One of the things, if you watched the last board meeting, is you may have seen that the county council cautioned the board about going too far so that a group on the other side, a large aviation group, and there's a number of them, don't come and press the other way with a lawsuit. Ironically, I was sitting in the lobby watching in the lobby of the county board, watching this while standing next to one of those groups. And his response is, Joe, we don't like this. I'm like, don't like what? So we don't like the restrictions. And so I feel like we're threading a needle right now. And so I want to stress that, is that we're threading a needle because the freedom of aviation, the freedom of airspace, that is a big national issue. But I was impressing upon this gentleman, you got to understand this airport's in the middle of a community. That there's a lot of great things happening, and everyone's going to walk away with 80% of what they want, not 100%. And this is not a battle to fight. And I'm a member of your organization, so please, let's talk about this some more. So that's the sensitivity. We've got tension on both sides of this issue. So I want to get this statement out early. There is some win-wins, and anyone who was there last night saw one of the short terms that's coming, a voluntary noise abatement. There are win-wins, and there's a long-term win-win as well, and we'll get into the details of the short term here in a moment. So a little bit about me. I lived in Orange County since 2001. I have 4 kids. My background is in real estate, and I've co-founded a really fun company called Howie's Game Shack. I'm an avid aviation enthusiast. I love airplanes. I love airports. How I got started is I was actually flying in a Southwest airplane. Now let's go back some years ago. Does anyone remember sitting backwards in a Southwest airplane? Even worse if you're in that middle seat. and so I looked out the window and I saw 2 people getting into a small business aircraft. And it just messed with my mind. I was like, how are they doing that? Like, they're rolling on a different schedule. And they're stepping this plane. I know there's tons of little airports. I didn't realize there was that many, 5,000 different little airports that you could fly to in smaller communities. There's only about 200 that have commercial service. So there's all these little airports sprinkled all over the country. And I was just thinking through the efficiency and the capability of what could happen if somehow I could learn how to fly, if I could learn this magic of flight. I learned to fly at John Wayne Airport 12 years ago now. And my first flight is etched in my memory. I just knew the moment I flew, I wanted to do more of this. Michael Church with Sunrise Aviation is dear to me because he's the one that taught me how to fly. And if you know some of the inside of what really happened a couple years ago, Michael Church and Sunrise Aviation were this close to getting eradicated off the field. So it was a piece of pride for me to see it come full circle and be able to salvage his business and to sustain it, for the foreseeable future. So I did learn to fly at John Wayne Airport. I hold many ratings. I'm type certificate, single pilot in a Citation Mustang. I'm also an owner of ACI Jet Orange County. This location has been award-winning. I've sat on a lot of stages and received a lot of awards for what's happened in the past 2 years. Additionally, we have the highest safety rating. We're the first ever Orange County FBO to receive an ISBA rating. So why the awards? We have great customer service. We remodeled our facilities in lightning times. Again, the highest standards of safety. But then there's the customer side of thing. What do people see in the business world when they come to Orange County? They generally don't see the commercial terminal. So when business leaders are coming to Orange County, they see the FBO. The FBO is fixed base operator. It is the first and last thing that is seen when a man or woman makes a decision about to invest into Orange County, whether to invest in jobs and business. It is really important that our front door and that initial experience, that their first takeaway and their last takeaway is an A+ experience. But when we target new customers, you have to be really smart about it. There's a lot of controversy about, does the Board of Supervisors control the runway? And the answer is no. The Board of Supervisors does not control the airspace, and it does not control the runway. That's controlled by the FAA. So let's compare it. I used this comparison last night that you look at the runway like a freeway. Anyone's welcome to drive on it. The county controls the land, like an FBO, called a parking lot. And here's the issue. You got to be really careful that the pendulum isn't on either side. You want the pendulum centered. And what I mean by that is, if you have no parking for airplanes, every airplane that comes still comes because, like the freeway, anyone can drive on it, but it drops and it goes. And it comes back, picks up and goes. Next one, drop and goes, picks up and goes. So if we had literally zero parking, we would have an absurd amount of unnecessary traffic coming through John Wayne. But on the flip side of the coin, if you build tons and tons of room, then you want tenants to fill that room. So then you attract planes that don't really belong here. I had a great question in the back where someone asked me, ACI has a repair facility in San Luis Obispo. Is there any thoughts to bring that to Orange County? And the answer is absolutely not. Because if a repair facility came in for heavy maintenance at Orange County, we're going to attract a plane with no passengers in the back to come here to do business for repair and then have them go empty as well. It is creating unnecessary traffic, unnecessary noise. So those are very logical ways to not bring unnecessary traffic to John Wayne, and there go the byproduct of noise. So the goal is to have that perfect balance and constantly monitor the aircraft that belong at John Wayne Airport while not attracting ones that don't belong here. So the question, what is an FBO? That's ACI Jet on the east side. Currently, we're split on both sides of the airport, and there's some reasons why that's a problem. But we have aircraft of all sizes, from light piston aircraft to heavy globe-trotting business jets. The convenience of coming to an FBO is unparalleled, no question. The idea is to have the strict level of security, but you balance it with customer service. There's the lobby. We quickly remodeled the entire facility, added more amenities with the pilot lounge, snooze rooms. We provide services of all kind. Everything that a Southwest or an American Airlines plane needs is also necessary for small aircraft. And so whether it's fuel, a lot of movements of aircraft, a lot of airplanes will have restrooms. That's actually the dirty part of the job. And then some of the amenities. So jumping into the GAIP, let me start off by saying I'm not the expert about what's coming. Tom Edwards did a great presentation yesterday, and he said, look, what's coming with the GAIP is not an expansion of the airport. It's like the remodel of a bathroom. So you update it, you may make things more efficient, but the footprint doesn't change. So that's clear. The questions about what are light GA, what is small GA, I've heard multiple things. Right now, the airport's in the process of the RFQ is complete, and they're going to come up to an RFP shortly, and it's anybody's guess of what's going to be in there and how light GA will be exactly defined. It was said yesterday that it's important that Newport stays involved and in the entire process. He called it a marathon, that this is the first couple miles of a marathon, and it's not just one decision ends all. So this was proposed by Vice Chair Steele and had the support of all 5 supervisors. So what you're looking at is one FBO on the west side, one FBO on the east side, a limited service FBO, and then this acreage dedicated to light GA, similar to how light GA is going to be at the limited service FBO. If questions come here, I don't have a lot of clarity beyond that, and we're excited to see what comes out next in the RFP. This is fun. This is Sacramento's airspace. This is our state's capital, and what you're looking at is the purple is a Class Charlie. Class Charlie is the second busiest airspace for an airport. And then the blue circles are deltas. So each one of those represents an airport. Up in Sacramento, they have 3 deltas and 1 Charlie. If we take a look at LA Basin, you're going to see the blues of Bravo. That's all due to LAX. And then we have 3 Charlies and then countless deltas. And then you see the airways going all directions. There is a lot of traffic. I have a lot of respect for air traffic controllers and then the way they can conduct an orchestra, but they're doing it with tons of heavy iron in the air. They're making all of these things work simultaneously. There's over 5,000 airplanes in the air over the United States right now. So one of the things I asked for, I asked JWA Noise Office for what are we looking at for the total amount of noise complaints? And this is going to address the noise issue. I put a lot of time in understanding what do I think is going wrong. I'll give a lot of credit to the elected and to the noise groups for having the patience to educate me on what their view and what they were experiencing. And like I said at the beginning, I think there's a lot of confusion. And I'll start with me. There was confusion with me. I couldn't grasp why was everyone complaining about noise. The airport's always been here, right? If you bought a house and you live next to the airport, did you not know it was there? Right? That's the common argument. And oh, by the way, if you talk to the pilot community, that's all they say. And it's like, guys, slow down. Let's try to understand this issue. What's going on? Councilman Herdman said to me, it's like everyone's going literally on top of the one prior to it. I'm like, well, that's true. It is. I mean, these things are, the neat thing about GPS is that planes have been flying themselves far earlier than cars can drive themselves. And 700 feet off the ground, 700 feet AGL, the gear's up, the plane's getting cleaned up. AP, his name is George, autopilot. I don't know, every autopilot's name is George. I don't know why. There's some probably a good Wikipedia, that one. But you turn on the autopilot. And at that point, flying a plane or flying a jet or at that point, the plane is flying itself. And as a pilot, I'm just there monitoring. I will never earn my pay as a pilot until an emergency happens because it's flying itself. And it does a great job at that. I'm sitting there to monitor George and how he's flying the airplane. So on an RNAV departure, flying GPS, they're literally within feet of each other. On this, it might as well just be railroad tracks because they're literally that tight. So what's interesting about this, Nick makes it clear that in September 2018 is when the JWA air noise button came out. And you can see a huge change in the number of complaints. So, which makes me think it's reasonable to assume that in 2017, there probably would have been a similar number of complaints had there been a button and made it easier to report these. So what I've asked the Airport Noise Office for an additionally sampling of data. I'd like to look at a month comparison in 2014 versus a month comparison in 2017. So pre-next gen and next gen departures, because my theory is, and I believe the data is going to correlate to this, and again, I can only say this 95% because we're waiting for the last chunk of data. We're going to find out that at least on the business aviation or the GA side, and there's a correlating side to the commercial as well, that the lower RNAV departures are going at higher speeds and thereby creating more noise. And this is very different. For those of you familiar with the settlement agreement and the noise sensors around John Wayne, they are monitoring right around John Wayne. They are not monitoring further away. So the complaints I hear is in the Back Bay or over Balboa Island. As you understand, Joe, you got to stop talking every 30 seconds because you got to wait for a plane to fly by and then continue your conversation. So as a pilot who's flown both pre-next gen and flown next gen hundreds of times, I've got some real world experience to look at this from in the cockpit and now adding into the data from what people are experiencing below. Okay, so bear with me. I gave the disclaimer last night that if too many eyes glaze over, I'm just going to skip to the next slides. But in fairness, Dennis, they stuck with me, right? People hung in there. So you take an extra swig of coffee and let's jump into this. This is the Muscle 8 departure. This is the pre-next gen. There's anywhere from 1 to 15 departure procedures that exist at an airport. In a document like this, it speaks to me where I can interpret this entire document in about a minute and a half. I've done it thousands of times. Any pilot can do it. But basically what it's giving me is the instructions on what to do as I'm leaving John Wayne Airport. So in this case, the Muscle 8 departure, and one thing to clarify, the reason it's called 8 is it's gone through 8 revisions since its creation. This is a really old departure. It's really refined, it's really good. So I learned to fly on the Muscle 7 departure 12 years ago. Goes to show you one revision in that period of time. And then we're going to take a look at the next gen. So a clearance on something like that clearance delivery from John Wayne Airport would say, hey, fly the Muscle 8 departure, climb, maintain 5,000 feet, which is really simple. I follow these directions and I climb to 5,000 feet as fast as I want, or as fast as I can. We're going to jump into the Hero 3 departure. This is next gen. Again, you get a lot of revisions on a departure when it's brand new. Not everything is right out of the gate, so the revisions come quick. One thing to focus on right here, there's John Wayne Airport, and I want you to take a look at Strel. That line and 5,000 feet means when you're flying an aircraft on the Hero 3 departure, do not cross Strel at 5,000 feet or above. You need to cross it at 5,000 feet or below. That's really important. So different than driving on the freeway. I'm sure all of us have probably gone 5 miles over the limit, maybe 10, right? And I think we all know the risk. If you get pulled over going 10 miles over the limit, you got a ticket, right? You took a risk, you got to pay the $300 or whatever the number is. 1,000 pilots could fly that this week on the Hero 3, and I assure you not one of them will bust that altitude. The reason is the penalties are severe. If I was to bust that altitude, I will be given a phone number. I will call that phone number upon landing. I'm going to have to explain to the FAA why I get to keep my license and now potentially lose my career. It's a big, big deal. So these plates are followed, and their mistakes don't happen often. So here's the Hero 3. This is important to note. John Wayne, you make the left turn, don't cross Strel beyond 5,000 feet. I believe when we see the last sampling of data, we're gonna understand that on the GA side that this is the culprit or the likely culprit for the problem with noise. And again, there's a similar pattern with commercial, different departures, but similar theme. If we take a look at the Muscle 8, again, you just make the left turn, you make it a little bit earlier. And this goes to the explanation. There's a lot of feedback from people in Newport saying it used to fan out, and now it's just one on top of another. And that makes sense. The data would show it did. There was multiple departures, and it did used to fan out a bit more. So again, with this departure, you'd be given the instructions to climb to 5,000 feet. So now the question is, when do you hit 5,000 feet? It depends on a lot of data. There's a lot of variables for those of you who have flown airplanes or know. But here's one thing that's pretty common in the industry, is you're using all the power. Those engines are revved up and they're at full power. And you get two choices how to use that power. You can use that power for speed, or you can use that power for an altitude. It's always a blend of the two, but which one are you using more for? Clearly on the Muscle 8, you're using that power for altitude. On the Hero 3, you're using it for speed. So is everyone following me so far? A lot of nodding heads, yes? So here's a comparison of the two. At 4 miles, this here is the Muscle 8. At 4 miles, before you ever hit the coastline, almost all planes can hit 5,000 feet. Versus at the Hero 3, and again, remember I said you can't cross Strel at 5,000, so you're not going to be even close to 5,000. When I fly this departure, I'm going to cross Strel at somewhere between 4,000 to 4,500. You got to be, right? You can't bust the altitude. It's a career-ending move. So there's a little bit of buffer. And this is the data that I'm excited to come back and see. And see how does this really translate. So what does this mean practically? So one thing I want to stress is pilots are good neighbors. I said this last night. Everyone's got their home airport. When I fly to other airports that aren't mine, and I visit other neighborhoods, and there's a voluntary noise abatement, I take a hard look at it, like every pilot does. If it's safe, then you fly the voluntary noise abatement procedure. So when I talked about there's short-term and there's long-term goals, the long-term is clearly another departure procedure that's more compatible with the community. But getting the FAA to create another departure procedure in a short amount of time isn't realistic. But the good news is we still have the Muscle 8. It's a valid departure. And the neat thing about it that few people don't understand is the pilot can actually, in his remarks and in the clearance, decide whether they will take a RNAV departure or not. PIC is pilot in command. So yes, we have to follow the instructions of air traffic control, but we can also express a limitation that we won't go across. And so I, for one, will no longer fly the Hero 3 anymore. And I'm looking at this data and saying once it's in, I think we should take a hard look at a voluntary noise abatement, educate the aviation community, and return to the Muscle 8 departure, and then look at that data and see how it measures up. So, any questions about that so far? No? Thanks. So, listen, I'm pro-airport. Again, I told you I love airplanes, I love airports. Airports do amazing things. It's not just, most people think about an airport that they're going to fly in a commercial airplane for business, for personal reasons, go somewhere. But it's an economic machine, creates a ton of jobs. It's a place of employment and home for a lot of people. Another really exciting thing is that all the shipments. Amazon Prime next day just doesn't magically get to a doorstep. It doesn't jump halfway across the country. And so there's a lot of really neat things about airports, and then there's just the magic of flight, the amazement of it. So look, I want to turn it over to questions here in a moment, but I'll close in saying this. We want to be a good neighbor. For me personally, it's a privilege to go up into the sky and fly an airplane. It's an amazing feeling of freedom. It's still magic to me. I understand the science, the Bernoulli principle, but it's still a piece of magic. And I don't know, I just light up when I see airplanes of all kinds. I think they're just wonderful feats of engineering. But there's a way to responsibly operate a business, to take care of the entire bridge of GA while still being a good neighbor. Take care of the piston community, the flight schools. Take care of the globe-trotting business jets. And I know there's going to be the issue of customs. That's a hotly debated issue. I'm very opinionated on it. I think it's, in my mind, a very, very blunt. I'll jump to the end of it, that we're a top 10 airport for business aviation in this country, and we don't have customs, to me, is just absurd. But I understand there's a lot of confusion around a lot of issues. So I'm excited to be here. Steve, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and thank you.
Well, if you learn nothing else, it's a complex issue. Everyone, I think, is familiar with the fact that we have a settlement agreement at John Wayne Airport that's unique in the country. Congress, when they found out about it, passed laws that said no one else could have that kind of restriction. And if we ever are accused of restricting commercial traffic, we could lose that settlement agreement. They could take it away from us. So we kind of operate in that, but what we're talking about now is nothing to do with that settlement agreement and the commercial aviation. It's the general aviation, which has never been under any kind of agreement. They have the ability today to fly 24/7, feels like 25/7. And now all of a sudden the supervisors have updated the master plan. They've made some preliminary decisions as to where they'd like to have these FBOs. They've made a decision which everybody kind of shirked at, but I look at as a landmark kind of decision. They said that they would look at the operating hours of the general aviation of 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Well, that's way outside our settlement agreement. But it's for the very first time there's been any talk of a limit on general aviation. And everything is been put down, but nothing is permanent when you're in government. And it was said last night that this is the beginning of a marathon of determining how best to provide good activity from the airport that's important to the community, but not damaging to the residents of Orange County as well. So we're off on that marathon. Stay tuned. We'll talk about this for the next 7 years. And now is that gentleman to my left again? He's just always here. I thought I had 20 more minutes. But so anyway, thank you for your presentation. And I guess the best we can say is stay tuned.
Thank you all for coming. Just a couple other quick announcements. Next week we are super busy. We have 4 meetings next week. Starting on Wednesday, July 17th, our business education lunch will be at Fleming's. We at Fleming's, Pam? Yes. Fleming's. Richard Franzini is our speaker. That's from 11:30 to 1:30. Thursday, we have 2 things going on Thursday. Bookending the day with Government Affairs Committee and Aaron Harp in the morning at 8 to 9:30. That's for chamber members only, and that's at our office. You can go online and make a reservation for that, or just show up. A lot of people just show up. And then in the evening, our Young Professionals group is going to partner with the Elite OC. So Navigate and Lead OC at the Lot Theater, starting at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Is that what it's going, Chris? I should have introduced Chris. He came in a little late. He's the chair of our vice chair or chair, I'm not even sure. Chris and Nick back there are our Navigate group, and they run our Young Professionals group for the under 40 crowd. So please join us for that. The Marine 1-1 Foundation is going to be the charity that's highlighted that evening, so which is a great group that I'm on the board of. And next day, we're going to have hopefully launch our first barbecue by the lake this summer. Stan's a regular. He shows up early, leaves late. See, we allow even stuttering people at our meetings, Stan. Unlike John Wayne Airport, you are welcome here. Just don't ask so many questions. No. So our next Sunset Mixer is at the Balboa Bay Resort. I've been doing this for over 6 years now. If I had to pick one mixer that was probably our top mixer, was the Balboa Bay Resort mixer we did about 4 years ago. It was off the charts. I don't know what they're going to do this time, but this is definitely one you don't want to miss. That's July 25th from 5:30 to 7:30. If you're not a chamber member and you want to join us, please call the office and we can get you on the guest list for that. July 30th is Angels Chamber Night at Angel Stadium. We're us and several other chambers are part of the chamber night at Angel Stadium. The seats were really great last time. I think they did it about a month and a half ago. So you can all these things you can find on newportbeach.com on our events. And then our next Wake Up Newport meeting, we'll go back to our regular first Thursday of the month. That'll be August 1st in this room. Unfortunately, our speaker canceled on us at the last minute, said she's going on vacation and couldn't show up. So we'll find somebody equally as good or better. But we look forward to seeing you on August 1st. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week, hopefully. Take care.